Hi everyone, welcome to our video on the groundbreaking paper Attention is All You Need. Although the subject is Transformers Paper Understanding, the main paper named it as Attention is All You Need, which was one of the popular papers by Vashini et al. In 2017. In this video, I will explore the revolutionary transformer model for you all and the implications of natural language processing. In 2017, Vaswani and his team introduced the transformer model, a new architecture for handling sequence transduction task. Unlike previous models, the transformer relies entirely on self-attention mechanism. We have a different module where we will be discussing about self-attention mechanism, but for now, just to understand it, that I would like to mention this architecture is completely dependent on self-attention mechanism. All right, so self-attention mechanism eliminates the need for recurrent RNN that we learned in our previous video, or LSTM based models, or convolutional layers. These innovation allows for greater parallelization and reduces training time significantly, all while improving performance. We can see the names here who are the main contributors of this paper, the research paper. So this is a dominant sequence transduction model and based on complex recurrent or convolutional neural networks that include an encoder and decoder. The best performing models also connect the encoder and decoder through an attention mechanism. This paper proposes a new simple neural network architecture that's called transformer, based on solely on attention mechanism, dispensing with recurrence and convolutional entirely. This transformer is not the transformer that we see in the movies or we see as a power generator, but this is entirely a different terminology used in NLP domain. As per the paper publishers, this model achieves 28.4 BLEU. BLEU is a score that measures the quality of the responses from a transformer model on WMT 2014 English to German translation task. So obviously you will be measuring these scores in given task, and in German English to German translation task, transformer models did really well, improving over the existing best results, including ensembles by over 2 BLEU. On the WMT 2014 English to French translation task, the model establishes a new single model state of the art BLEU score of around 41.8, which is amazing after training for 3.5 days on 8 GPUs. This is very important to understand that to train these language models, we definitely needed a lot of GPU or resources to, over a couple of days and sometimes months. LLMs definitely requires months. LMs or language models based on transformer architecture, language models and large language models, all of them are based on transformer architecture, and that's why we are learning about this paper here, as just the scale is different. The scale is higher in case of large language models. So one of the key advantages of transformer model is the ability to parallelize computation. Traditional RNNs process sequence to sequence data, but transformers can handle multiple elements of sequence simultaneously. This parallelization is particularly beneficial for long sequences, reducing training times and improving efficiency. The transformer model set new benchmark in machine translation task, achieving impressive BLEU score. All right, so we already discussed about different BLEU scores. We're not going to deep dive into each and every line and understand each and everything from this paper, but it is very important that we understand this paper in detail, especially the self-attention mechanism part. Recurrent neural network, long short-term memory, and gated neural network, right, in particular have been firmly established as state of the art approaches in sequence modeling and transduction problems such as language modeling and machine translation. Numerous efforts have since continued to push the boundaries of recurrent language models and encoder decoder architectures. I will give you a very brief understanding of encoder decoder architectures later on, but for now, just to understand, encoder is the part that actually takes an input, generates, which is more close to understandable by the decoder. It's like an language translator who takes the input from the original speaker and then translates it to understandable form, and then it presents it to the listener, right? But that's a very high level understanding of encoder decoder. We will deep dive into it later. The other part of this paper is attention mechanism that have become an integral part of compiling sequence modeling and transduction models in various tasks, allowing modeling of dependencies without regard to their distance in the input or output sequences. The goal of reducing sequential computation also forms the foundation of extended neural GPU, ByteNet, and Conv-S2S, all of which use convolutional neural network as basic building block, computing hidden representations in parallel for all input and output positions. This is a little bit of background before we talk about the transformers. So, to best of our knowledge, however, the transformer is the first transduction model relying entirely on self-attention to compute representations of its input and output without using sequence aligned RNNs or convolutions. Model architecture is comprised of few things here. The transformer employs an encoder decoder structure. Encoder decoder structure, with both parts consisting of multiple identical layers. Let's break it down. The first part is known as self attention mechanism. The first part is known as self attention mechanism, right? This is the first part. What is the second part? Multi-head attention, which I will talk about later. Multi-head attention, right? These are the two parts primarily discussed as the core architecture of transformer. This image is taken from the original transformers architecture, which is the paper named as Attention is All You Need. And if you look at this architecture here, it explains an input embedding, an output embedding, which actually creates an embedding of the input sequences. Let's say I'm passing in I saw a cat, which goes as an embedding, and also applies positional encoding that goes to the multi-head attention, do a normalization, feed forward network, do a normalization, and this gives you a set of outputs which is fed into the multi-head attention layer in the decoder, right? And along with the multi-head attention that feeds into the positional encoding and the output which is shifted right. So we are going to deep dive into this architecture a little bit later, but for now, just to understand, make it more clear, this is the encoder part and this is the decoder part. This is the decoder part. All right. So at the heart of transformer is the self-attention mechanism. You don't see self-attention here, but this is kind of been used in each of these multi-head attention mechanisms. So self-attention mechanism allows each position in the sequence to attend to every other position. And this mechanism enables the model to capture dependencies across the entire sequence, a whole set of paragraph or sequence of documents. This mechanism enables the model to capture dependencies across the entire sequence, as I said, regardless of their distance. Multi-head attention is utilized or leveraged to enhance its ability to capture different aspects of the input sequences. The transformer uses multi-head attention instead of using single attention mechanism, and it employs multiple attention heads, each focusing on different parts of the sequence. If we talk about encoder and decoder stacks, encoder is composed of stack of n equals to 6 identical layers. 6 identical layers. Like Y6, this is the architectural choice, but it can be any set of n. So each layer has two sub-layers. The first is multi-head self-attention mechanism, and the second is simple positional wise fully connected feed-forward network. So we employ a residual connection around each of the two sub-layers followed by layer normalization, which we saw here, right? So we can have 6 substacks like this. This is the output of each sublayer is layer normalization, where sublayer X is the function implementation by the sublayer itself to facilitate these residual connections. All sublayers in the model as well as the embedding layers produce outputs of dimension 512. And this is from where this dimension 512 comes in. The decoder also composed of n equals to 6 identical layers. In addition to the sublayers in each encoder layer, the decoder insert a third sublayer which performs multi-head attention over the output of encoder stack. Can you see here? The encoder's output also processes another multi-head attention layer. So we also modify the self-attention sublayer in the decoder stack to prevent positions from attending to subsequent positions. This masking combined with fact that the output embeddings are offset by one position ensures that the predictions for position I can depend only on the known outputs at position less than I. That's why we have these positional embedding comes into picture. Attention is a function that can describe them as mapping a query and a set of key value pairs to an output where query, key and value QKV. I will be repeating it multiple times in the next set of videos to understand what is exactly QKV means in terms of attention. So there is a terminology called scaled dot product attention. We call our particular attention scaled dot product attention. The input consists of queries and keys of dimension dk, which is, let's say, the dimension of the vector. So we compute the dot products of the query and key, and all the keys divide each by root over dk and apply a softmax function to obtain weights of the values. If you look at this, attention of QKV is softmax over QK divided by root over dk into V, the value. The two most commonly used attention functions are additive attention and dot product attention. Dot product attention is identical to our algorithm except for scaling factor, which is 1 by dk. Additive attention computes the compatibility function using a feed-forward network with a single hidden layer. So while two are similar in theoretical complexity, dot product attention is much faster because we are doing computations in millions, and more space efficient in practice since it can be implemented using highly optimized matrix multiplication code. While for small values of decay, the two mechanisms perform similarly. Additive attention outperforms dot product attention without scaling for large values. So we suspect that for large values of decay, the dot product grow large in magnitude, pushing the softmax function into regions where it has extremely small gradients. All right. The next thing that we are going to talk about is multi-head attention. As I said earlier, instead of performing a single attention function with D model dimension keys, values, and queries, we found it beneficial to linearly project the queries, keys, and values h times with different learned linear projections to dk, d, dk, dq, so it should be q, dq, dk, and dv dimensions respectively. So one on each of these projected versions of queries, keys, and values, we then perform the attention function in parallel, yielding dv dimension. So this is what is multi-head attention, which is calculated over q, k, and v concatenated with multiple heads. So each head is getting from one single self-attention layer, and then we are multiplying with the weights of each layer. All right. This is an example of scaled dot product attention. So you have q, k, and v multiplied with the matrix multiplication, scaled forward, and then applied softmax layer, and then you finally get the scaled dot product attention. And there is multi-head attention, which is consisting of q, k, v calculation using scaled dot product attention, finally concatenated and getting the output from these models. So the scale dot product attention mechanism calculates the dot product of the queries and keys, scales them to prevent extremely small gradients, because if the gradients become smaller, you almost lose context or information. So it applies the softmax function to obtain attention weights. All right. This is the next thing is position wise feed forward network, that is part of the transformer architecture. Since the transformer model lacks recurrence and convolution, it uses positional encoding to maintain the order of the sequences. So let's say if I'm saying I am a cat, so this is a sequence that is being followed here, right? And how that is being calculated or tracked is through positional encoders. Positional encoding is here to maintain the order of these sequences. If the order changes, let's say I'm saying I saw a cat, instead of that if I say cat saw me or cat saw I, right? It completely changes the meaning. So definitely it is important that we maintain the order of these sequences, and this encoding incorporates sinusoidal functions of different frequencies, allowing the model to understand the position of each word in the sequence. All right. So finally, then we have to talk about embedding, and embedding is nothing but the similarity to other sequences transduction models. We use learned embeddings to convert the input tokens and output tokens to vectors and dimensions. So we also use usual learned linear transformation and softmax function to convert decoder output to predicted next token probabilities. So in this model, we share a same weight matrix between two embedding layers and pre-softmax linear transformation, similar to described before in our previous section. So in the embedding layers, we multiply those weights by root over D model. D model is nothing but the dimension of the self-attention vector, so which is around 512k, and we are using actually 64k dimension vector here, and that's what is multiplied here. All right, so positional embedding is, as I talked about, these are for tracking the sequence order, and it helps us maintain the meaning or the context properly. So the POS in the position and I is the dimension here, and that is like each dimension of the positional encoding corresponds to a sinusoid. So the wavelengths from a geometric progression from 2 pi to 10,000 dot 2 pi. And we chose this function because we hypothesized it with it would allow the model to easily learn to attend by relative positions, right? So it's a sinusoidal network. All right, and then finally the part that remains is the training. How do we train this model? So we trained on a standard WMT 2014 English German dataset consisting of about 4.5 million sentence pairs. That's great, a huge number. And sentences were encoded using byte pair encoding, and which is shared source target vocabulary of about 37,000 tokens. Not a lot, because today these language models are in billion and trillion sometimes. So for English French, we use significantly larger WMT, around 36 million sentences. If you say from 4.5 million, we can see compared to that it is 36 million sentences, and that's why you saw the BLEU score is also higher for the English French translation. Hardwares are like 8 NVIDIA P100 GPUs used here for the base models using the hyperparameters described throughput. The paper with the training step took about 0.4 seconds, and we trained the base models for a total of 100k steps for 12 hours. So for our big models described in the bottom, and step time is 1.0 seconds. So the big models were trained for almost 300k steps. So that's why it took around 3.5 days. And there are optimizers like Adam optimizer being used here, and the varied learning rate being modified. I mean, basically used for training these models. And also they have employed three types of regularization during the training process. Right, so the transform architectures better BLEU scores are dependent on how many hours they have trained on and what data set that's been used. And we can look at it here. The transformer base model has around 27.3, while transformer big model has 28.4 as a BLEU score, right? And for English to German translation, for English to French, it is around 41.8. So that's a great BLEU score, and that determines that what's the quality of these translations. Definitely we can increase the BLEU score further by maybe increasing the model size and also increasing the amount of data being trained on. And that's the goal, and that's why we see the transformers are evolved into large language models. So this paper is a great summary and understanding of the attention mechanism as a core of transformer architecture, and the whole transformer is being the core of the all the LLMs and LMs that we saw today and in our previous videos. So in summary, the attention is all you need paper introduced a paradigm shift in natural language processing with transformer model. By leveraging self-attention mechanisms and multi-head attention, the transformer achieved remarkable performance improvements and efficiency. So its impact continues to shape the development of advanced models in this field. Right, so thank you for watching this video demonstrating on transformer models. Stay tuned and let's move forward to the next videos. Thank you so much, everyone.